Welcome to the Deep Dive, the Theopoetics Edition. We are Dr. Aaron Waldron, founder and CEO of Corvus Cantus, a theopoetic publishing house and creation of Lost Raven Studios. What you're hearing right now is an expansion. The original Deep Dive podcast has been a space shaped and supported by AI, a place where ideas are explored, questions are sharpened, and insight is generated through emerging technology. But this edition marks a widening of that circle. Through our partnership between Corvus Cantus and the Deep Dive podcast, the Theopoetics Edition becomes a threshold space, where artificial intelligence meets sacred imagination, where technology intersects with myth, poetry, theology, and embodied reflection. Here we focus intentionally on theopoetics. We teach, we inform, we remember, we draw from Theopoetics and the publishings of Corvus Cantus, the books, the dialogues, the voices inhabiting the liminal spaces between doubt and devotion, critique and creativity. This is not systematic theology. This is not rigid dogma. This is theology felt, spoken, questioned, reimagined. In a meta-modern age, where we oscillate between irony and sincerity, fragmentation and hope, Theopoetics offers a way forward, not by resolving tension, but by inhabiting it. So whether you are a writer, a seeker, a scholar, or simply someone holding an old smelly box of inherited beliefs, this space is for you. Welcome to the Deep Dive, Theopoetics Edition. Let's begin.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling a mountain. And I don't mean a metaphorical hill or a steep incline. I mean an absolute Everest of 20th century thought. We are looking at Alfred North Whitehead's Process and Reality.
It is definitely a summit.
Right.
And honestly, it's one of those books that scares off even seasoned philosophy professors.
Oh, completely.
It's incredibly dense, it invents its own vocabulary entirely, and it demands that you rethink basically everything you assume about the world.
Which is exactly why we're doing it, because the sheer ambition of this book is it's staggering. Whitehead isn't just trying to explain one little part of life, like ethics or logic. He is attempting to frame a system of ideas that explains everything.
Literally everything.
Right, from the way an electron vibrates, to the way you feel about a sunset, to the actual nature of God. He wants one logical system that fits every single element of human experience.
That's right. He calls it speculative philosophy. And his goal here was to construct a cosmology, a map of the universe, really where we don't have to separate our scientific knowledge from our emotional or religious experience.
Yeah.
He wanted a world where feelings and physics inhabit the exact same reality.
But before we get into the heavy stuff, and it definitely gets heavy, we have to talk about the messy backstory of the book itself. Because for a guy who is trying to create a perfectly coherent system of the universe, the book itself is famously a bit of a mess.
Oh, it really is. The text is notoriously difficult, and not just because the ideas are complex. The original 1929 edition was absolutely riddled with hundreds of errors.
I love this detail from the editor's preface in our source material. Apparently, Whitehead just didn't proofread, at all.
Well, he had a whole philosophy about that, too. There's this wonderful anecdote about Bertrand Russell, the famous logician who actually worked with Whitehead. Russell complained once that Whitehead never answered his letters.
Typical academic drama.
Right. And Whitehead replied that if he answered letters, he would have no time for original work.
Which, honestly, sounds like a great excuse. But for a logician,
Yeah.
just saying, sorry, I can't text back, I'm busy rewriting the metaphysical foundations of the universe.
And Russell actually found that justification complete and unanswerable. But the funny thing is, Whitehead applied that exact same ruthlessness to proofreading process and reality. He completely prioritized the adventure of ideas over the humdrum details of checking typos.
Which led to, over 300 discrepancies between the American and English editions?
Exactly. Hundreds of them.
It's surprisingly humanizing, really. You have this genius mind soaring through the cosmos, but he just can't be bothered to check his commas.
Yeah, the mundane details just didn't matter to him.
But our mission today is to cut through those technical errors and the sheer density of the text. We want to uncover what he called the philosophy of organism.
Right. And for you listening, if you've ever felt like the world isn't made of static, dead stuff, but is actually made of flowing, living processes, then Whitehead is writing for you.
So let's unpack this. Whitehead has a very specific method for how we should think about the world. He doesn't believe in just sitting in an armchair and guessing, but he also doesn't think we can just look at raw facts without some kind of theory. He uses this great metaphor of an airplane flight.
It's one of his most vivid images in the whole book. You'll find it right in Part 1, Chapter 1. He describes the method of speculative philosophy. Like, it starts from the ground of particular observation. That's the runway. You look at the world, you see all the messy particular detail.
But you don't stay there, because if you just stay on the ground looking at dirt, you're not really doing philosophy, right? You're just cataloging things.
Exactly. Whitehead felt that rigid empiricism, just collecting facts the way Francis Bacon advocated, was totally insufficient. It basically leaves science exactly where it found it. So you need the free play of imagination. You have to make a flight in the thin air of imaginative generalization. That is where you construct your theory.
Okay, so you fly up, you use your imagination, controlled by logic, to find a system that explains the dirt on the ground. But the key is the landing, isn't it?
Yes, you absolutely have to land again. You land for renewed observation, rendered acute by rational interpretation.
If the plane doesn't land, it's just a fantasy.
Right, and if it never takes off, it's just raw data. Whitehead actually says rationalism is an adventure of hope. It's not some static dogma.
An adventure of hope. I really like that. It implies that we can actually figure this out.
It's the hope that the universe actually makes sense, that there is an essence to the universe. It's the belief that if we look hard enough and imagine clearly enough, we can find a general system that explains literally everything, from a stray thought to a massive thunderstorm.
Okay, so the plane has taken off. We're in the thin air. Let's look at what Whitehead thinks the world is actually made of. Because normally when we think of reality, we think of things. Objects, rocks, chairs, atoms, solid stuff. Like, I'm holding a pen right now and it feels pretty solid. Whitehead would say I'm completely wrong about that, wouldn't he?
He would definitely say, you're experiencing the fallacy of misplaced concreteness.
Fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Okay, break that down for us.
You're treating the pen as a single static object because that's how your senses summarize it for convenience. But in Whitehead's view, that pen isn't a thing at all. It's a route of events. He wants us to abandon the idea of static substance entirely.
So if it's not stuff, what is it? What's the universe made of?
It's made of actual entities, or sometimes he calls them actual occasions. These are the final real things of which the world is made.
Actual entities. That sounds incredibly abstract. Help us visualize this. Are we talking about atoms? Quarks?
No, because even an atom is a structure made of something deeper. Don't think of actual entities as tiny particles of dead matter. Think of them as drops of experience.
Drops of experience. Okay, I have to stop you right there, because when you say experience, I immediately think of consciousness. I think of me feeling happy or sad. Is Whitehead saying my pen has feelings? Or that electrons are conscious?
Not conscious like you are conscious. He's not saying the electron is sitting there pondering its existence or stressing about its taxes.
Right.
But he is saying that the electron has a form of experience. It takes in data from its environment and reacts to it. Whitehead describes actual entities as drops of experience, complex and interdependent. Imagine the universe not as a collection of billiard balls banging into each other, but as a vast flowing network of momentary flashes of activity.
So reality is more like a movie frame than a photograph.
Even more granular than that. It's like the refresh rate on a monitor. What looks like a solid picture is actually billions of individual pixels flashing on and off incredibly fast. Each distinct flash is an actual entity.
And what I found really fascinating and frankly a bit radical is how totally democratic this view is. He says God is an actual entity, and so is the most trivial puff of existence in far-off empty space.
That's the democracy of things. In traditional philosophy, God is usually treated as a totally different kind of substance than a stone or a human being, a supreme exception to all the rules. But Whitehead says, no. They differ in importance, certainly, and they differ in function, but not in principle. They are both actual entities. They are both processes of becoming.
That leads us to one of the biggest rules in his entire system. He calls it the ontological principle, which sounds terrifyingly academic, but the way he explains it seems to be mostly about accountability.
It is. The principle is simply no actual entity, then no reason.
No actual entity, no reason. Walk us through that.
It means there are no floating, abstract reasons for things in the universe. You can't say, this happened because of the laws of nature, as if the laws of nature are ghost-like entities floating in the void controlling us. The laws aren't separate from the things. They are just the habits of the actual entities.
So I can't blame the economy for being broke.
Exactly. The economy isn't an actual entity. It's an abstraction. It's a summary of billions of actual distinct transactions between real people. If you want a reason for why you're broke, you have to point to actual facts. You spent money here, you didn't earn money there. Whitehead is very strict about this. To search for a reason is to search for an actual fact. Everything must be anchored in an actual entity.
Okay, so we have a universe made of these flashing drops of experience. But here's the problem I naturally run into. If I'm just a drop of experience and you're a drop of experience, why isn't the world just a chaotic mess of lonely, isolated drops? How do we connect? How does the flash of the electron affect the flash of the nucleus?
This brings us to the real heart of his philosophy of organism, connectivity. Whitehead introduces a concept called prehensions.
Prehensions, that sounds like apprehension, like grasping something.
That's the root of the word. Prehension comes from the Latin for seizing. In Whitehead's system, a prehension is how one actual entity feels or grasps another actual entity. It is a concrete fact of relatedness.
You use the word feels again.
I did, and I mean it in a very physical sense. In standard science, we tend to think of feeling as a biological fluke that happens inside a brain. Whitehead flips the board on that entirely. He says gravity is a feeling.
Gravity is a feeling. That's a bumper sticker right there, but what does it actually mean in practice?
It means the way the Earth pulls the moon is a primitive form of the way you feel a memory. The moon prehends the Earth. It takes the data of the Earth's mass and position, it feels it, and adjusts its own path accordingly.
So the universe isn't a machine made of cold gears. It's a web of emotional connections.
Essentially, yes. Prehensions have what he calls a vector character. They have a specific direction. They feel from there to here. And they involve emotion, purpose, and valuation. It's not just a cold data transfer. The universe is completely saturated with emotional content because every entity is essentially saying, I feel you, and I'm adjusting myself because of you.
That makes the world feel incredibly intimate. It kind of dissolves that standard modern sense of alienation. We aren't strangers walking around in a cold, dead universe. We are deeply woven into it.
Exactly. And when you have a set of these actual entities that are united by their prehensions of each other, Whitehead calls that a nexus.
A nexus, like a network.
Yes. Think of a nexus. The plural is also nexus, by the way, like a crowd at a concert. The crowd isn't a single giant organism. It's a nexus of individual people prehending the music and prehending each other, creating a shared event. A rock is a nexus. A star is a nexus. It's a public matter of fact.
So the solid thing I see is just a stable pattern of these interactions.
Correct. And this stability creates a platform for something totally new to emerge, which leads directly to his category of the ultimate, and that is creativity.
The many become one and are increased by one. That was the phrase in the text. It sounds almost biblical.
It is the foundational formula for existence in his system.
Yeah.
Think about the exact moment you are in right now. You have the billions of past events, the temperature of the room you're sitting in, the sound of my voice, your memory of breakfast. Those are the many.
Okay, they are all washing over me right now.
And you, as an actual entity, prehend them. You synthesize them. You bring them all together into a single, unified moment of experience. The many have become one.
And increased by one because now this specific moment exists, which didn't exist a second ago.
Precisely. And that new, completed moment immediately becomes data for the next moment. That is the creative advance of the universe. It's always moving from disjunction, many separate things, to conjunction, one new thing.
This totally changes how we have to think about time, doesn't it? Because in the standard view, time is like a container, a riverbed that the water flows through, or a stage that actors walk across.
Whitehead absolutely rejects that. He fiercely rejects vacuous actuality. That's the idea of dead stuff just floating around in empty time. He says time is the process of these entities becoming. Time isn't the container. Time is the action itself.
He takes that ancient Heraclitus, quote, no man steps in the same river twice, and he gives it a really profound twist.
Right. Heraclitus meant the river changes, so it's a different river. Whitehead goes much further. He says, no thinker thinks twice. No subject experiences twice.
Wait, no thinker thinks twice. But I'm still me. I'm the exact same host who started this deep dive 15 minutes ago.
Are you? This is the concept of perpetual perishing. And I'll warn you, it's the most challenging part of his view on time.
Perpetual perishing? It sounds incredibly tragic, like we're constantly dying.
In a metaphysical way, we are. Whitehead says an actual entity is a process of becoming. But once it has become, once it achieves what he calls its satisfaction, it's done. It perishes subjectively. It literally stops feeling.
So the me from 10 seconds ago is dead.
Subjectively, yes. That version of you is no longer the active, feeling thinker. But, and this is the beautiful part of the system, it becomes objectively immortal.
Objectively immortal. That's quite a phrase.
Yes. By perishing as an active subject, it becomes a solid object for the future. It becomes a permanent building block for the current you. If the moments didn't perish, time would freeze entirely. The perishing of the past is the necessary price we pay for the creativity of the future. You are standing on the foundation of your past selves to reach the future.
That is heavy. But it's also kind of freeing, honestly. It means I'm not trapped by who I was because that person is technically gone. I'm just using the data they left behind to build the next moment.
Exactly. It makes every single moment a fresh start, at least theoretically. You are prehending your past self, but you are actively deciding how to use that data right now in the present.
Okay, we have to pivot to the elephant in the room here, or rather the God in the room, because usually when modern philosophers start talking about atoms and space-time and relativistic physics, they deliberately leave religion entirely out of it. But Whitehead puts God right in the center of the system.
He does, but it's very important to note that it's not the God you might hear about in a traditional Sunday school. It's a very specific metaphysical necessity. Whitehead realizes that if you just have infinite possibilities and infinite creativity, you would just have total chaos. You need something to anchor and organize the potential.
So where does God fit into drops of experience?
Whitehead describes God as having two distinct natures, the primordial nature and the consequent nature.
Let's break those down. Primordial nature. That sounds like the unmoved mover idea from Aristotle, the original blueprint.
It's somewhat similar. The primordial nature is God's conceptual valuation of all eternal objects. Think of eternal objects as the menu of the universe. The color blue, the key is C sharp, the abstract concept of justice. These are pure possibilities. God's primordial nature is the eternal vision of all these possibilities.
So God knows everything that could possibly happen.
Yes. And Whitehead says that without this divine ordering of possibilities, novelty would be meaningless. If all possibilities were just a chaotic equal soup, nothing fundamentally new and structured could ever emerge. God is the organ of novelty. He provides the lure for what the world could become.
He lures the world. He doesn't command it.
That is the crucial distinction. In Whitehead's system, God is not a dictator. He doesn't push the actual entities around by force. He presents the best possible outcome to the world, almost like a poet presenting a vision, and the actual entities, the world itself, decide whether to follow it or not.
Okay, that's the primordial nature, the menu of possibilities. What about the consequent nature? Because this is the part that sounded almost heretical to me when I first read it.
This is where Whitehead becomes very radical, theological speaking. The consequent nature is God's physical prehension of the evolving world.
Wait, so God feels us?
God feels every single actual entity. Remember, prehension is a two-way street. We feel the past, but God feels us. God receives a direct reaction from the temporal world. As the world creates new things, God's consequent nature actually changes and grows to include those new creations.
So God is evolving. God is actually learning from the universe.
In his consequent nature, yes, absolutely. Whitehead calls God the poet of the world. He saves the world by remembering it. Every drop of experience that perishes in the temporal world, every joy you feel, every sorrow, every single electron spin is saved and woven eternally into God's consequent nature.
That is a fascinating paradox. God is both the condition for creativity by holding all the possibilities and a creature of creativity because he is constantly affected by what actually happens.
Exactly. Whitehead has this incredibly beautiful line where he says, God is the fellow sufferer who understands it's a very relational, very intimate view of the divine. It implies that what we do genuinely matters to the ultimate structure of the universe. We aren't just acting out a pre-written script. We are co-writing the script alongside him.
So let's land the plane here, using Whitehead's own metaphor. We've flown through the thin air of speculative philosophy. We've seen the drops of experience, the web of feeling, the perpetual perishing of time, and this evolving concept of God. What does this actually mean for you, the person listening to this while driving to work or folding laundry?
It ultimately asks for a massive shift in how you view your own identity. If you take Whitehead seriously, you have to stop thinking of yourself as a noun and start thinking of yourself as a verb.
I'm not a thing. I'm a doing.
Yes. You are a process. You are literally composed of fleeting occasions that constantly inherit the past and decide the future. You are intimately connected to everything else in the universe through this vast web of feeling.
And it completely changes how you look at the physical world around you, too. If that rock or that tree outside your window isn't just dead matter, but a complex community of activities,
it re-enchants the world entirely. It means nature isn't just a dead resource to be used and discarded. It's a community of value. Everything has an interior life, however dim or primitive it might be.
I want to leave you with a provocative final thought based on what we've discussed today. We spent some time on perpetual perishing, the idea that every moment of your life is a distinct, actual entity that dies to make room for the next.
Right, the perishing of the subject.
So if that is true, what does that mean for your sense of self? When you say I, who are you really talking about? Are you a single, solid thing that was born years ago and persists unchanged? Or are you a society of billions of distinct moments held together only by a thread of memory and feeling?
It deeply suggests that you are not a static object at all, but a historical route, a trajectory.
A trajectory, like the wake of a boat, but the boat itself is being rebuilt out of nothing every single second.
And the wake just keeps moving forward.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into process and reality. It's a remarkably tough text, but the view from the summit is absolutely worth the climb.
Absolutely. Keep looking at the world as process, not just stuff.